Hey guys, Steve's here with Tony's. Got a mess on the bench here. Trying to get the 50 Lincoln finished up, and I noticed that the shift lever on the steering column was just not functioning like it should. It would operate, but it wasn't snapping back, and it had detents to go between the drive forward gears and low and reverse, and it just wasn't operating right. At first I thought maybe my new wiring for the turn signal switch was binding up the column, but upon further inspection there is a separate channel that wiring goes down on the side of the column here that's away from the everything else. I did discover that the center steering shaft is bent or off centered, so depending on where it's at when you turn it, it's this way or that way, up and down, which is putting a little bit of binding on it. But there is a bearing at the top, let's see, a bearing right here that centers that with this collar. So what I'm doing here is just kind of showing you what's inside, what I've seen or discovered in this column so far. This is as far as you can get it apart without taking it out of the car, which is the next step. This is the chase for the wiring. These top and bottom slots are for these square-headed bolts that are on in the column. Starting at the base here, well, first off we have the indicator, the shift tube. That hole is where the shifter knob goes into, which is right here. That end of that goes into this hole in the column, which goes through this bracket, this bezel, and then there you've got your detents for the shifting. So this is in first, this is over the top. That inner column slides in here, so I did clean that up, which didn't help. This rides on that bushing. It's actually a bronze bushing that slides on there, and so that's what gives you your locks for neutral to low or neutral to reverse. And again, they're these square-headed bolts. When you're taking the column apart, you can take these nuts all the way off and just let them drop and pick them up afterwards. I haven't had them disappear yet because this piece is on there, so they'll just fall into there, worst case. But to put the column on, you do have to have them on about as loose as you dare. And then as you push it onto the column, they lock, they pivot and then lock. As you tighten them, they lock onto the column. This square window is where the wires come out. This round window, round spot, is where the turn signal canceller gets bolted in, and then the bolt that holds that in place also holds the turn signal lever. So most of this is pretty self-explanatory once you take it apart. I'm just trying to get into more of this end of the world because I've taken it. This tube does come out if you give it some wiggles and pull it out of there. Going over to the car, my next step is, of course, none of this will come out of there because there's the steering shaft that goes through there. But there is a bracket down here that I'll unbolt. I'll pull the carpet back and take the brackets, the screws out for this bracket or this escutcheon, so that this can clear, and I should be able to pull this whole outer tube off. And once I unbolt the bracket from underneath the dash here, there's basically kind of a U-bolt that holds it in place there. I should be able to pull the entire column out, because the issue I'm having is when this is down in the column, there's supposed to be a spring that pushes this back, just like in modern cars. When you grab the indicator, when you let go, it should have a neutral place. And this, wherever you push it or pull it, that's where it stays. So I'm trying to remedy that. Plus I also discovered that when I put it together with the steering wheel fits up against this piece here, and there was too wide of a gap. So I think that outer piece, this outer piece here has to adjust this way anyways, so I can clean that up and get it to look as nice as it can. So I will pull the floor mat out, pull the carpet back, put a moving blanket down just so I don't mess up my brand new interior, and spend some time remedying this situation. So that's what's in the column, and that is how far it'll come apart without you taking it out of the car. Thanks. So after inspection, the gear selector collar was not sliding freely on the bottom of the column. It got out of round. So I've spent some time with hammers and sandpaper trying to polish this up. So now it slides on this collar, which should allow this spring to do its job. Okay, let's put this together and see how it works. Gotta love that. Anyhow, so we have a cup that goes in here with a spring behind it, and then a collar, and that collar rides on gear selector. So this goes in as a pack, just like that. Put a little bit of lithium grease on the column. We feed it from the end. And then it's going to kind of, there we go. Just got to find where the slots are. Get everything lined up. Melts all the way in. And if I go to this end, in and out, just like it should. So, happy camper. Again, this is how this goes in. This will slide over the column. I'll have to get everything adjusted. These are the windows that these square bolts lock into. This goes tight up against the shifter column with the shifter insert. Let's see if I can get this together here for you. Okay, so that's like that. This goes without this and the right way around. This goes on there like that. In, and then the steering wheel goes on the end of here. Before I had at least this key width of gap, so I'm going to bring the column up just a little bit because I can adjust this outside collar, and we'll go from there. Okay, the column is back in, steering wheel's on. I've got a punch in the shift lever just because I ordered what I think is an upgraded pins and springs system. I'm not sure it'll work. If it doesn't, I'll just hammer the roll pin back in there. Steering wheel's on. I closed up this gap a little bit. It was a little bit wide before. And I did that by pulling, get you down in here, pulling this collar back a little bit and this outer cover back, because of course the steering shaft that the steering wheel attaches to is in the box, and that's fixed. So by sliding this back that little bit, it closed up that gap. Here you can see the shifter linkage. This is the start switch. It has to be in park in order to start. I've got a grease zerk there. Oh, excuse the air cleaner bracket. So to get the column out, this of course has the inner shaft and this outer shaft on it. So this backing plate, or this plate for the column, has to come out from the inside along with the rubber seal. As you can see, that's up in there, the rubber seal, and then there's 2 bolts above this bracket here, or this cover. There's 2 bolts. It's a U-bolt that holds the column to the dash. That has to come out, and then the column is loose, or I should say the outer column is loose. So then this whole tube with the steering wheel off and the wires unplugged will come right out. So that's what I did, and did my adjustments on the bottom of the column. There's an inner tube in the column that comes down and interfaces with this lever. This lever, at the bottom of it, there's a spring pack down in here, and everything has to slide on that column. And somewhere along the line, that column got crushed or a little bit out of round, to where this shifter linkage would shift just fine, but you would have to forcibly move the shift lever forward and back to get it to engage with the low and reverse features of the shifter. So that was kind of the big chore. And then of course I went through the wiring again, made sure everything was good. My canceling works for the signals, and the turn signals all work. So I was a little apprehensive at first in taking out this column, but I'm very glad I did, and found that the problem is down in the column. It's not impossible to take out. It's not a mess. Just cover yourself, cover the seats, and take it out and clean it up, especially if it hasn't been. So, all right, catch you next time.